taking a look. As always, I hope that this podcast finds you well. Now, this week, I had the wonderful opportunity of interviewing Lois Hollis from America, and she is the founder of Shame Guilt, which I thought was a very interesting concept. I'd interviewed her a couple of years ago for my Ultimate Emotional Health Summit, and she was a joy to engage with. And if you're only just hearing her for the first time, you did get a chance to hear on the summit, then of course you can still go and get details and watch all of the speakers. But I wanted to bring her back because I do believe the subject of shame guilt, or guilt shame, however you want to put those terms together, they're very insidious and they're very damaging. And I think what has been clear in the work that I've been doing over the past 7-8 years is how it sits like a fungus, like a dry rot or a dampness, like it does under the foundations of a property. Shame and guilt can sit deep down in the recesses of many people that I work with, hence why my work has evolved more into focusing on embracing emotions and the emotional component. Because if you've had shame and guilt projected upon you from a very young age, maybe because that's what happened to your parents and what happened to their parents, and it has come down through the ancestral line, and it's just people aren't even aware that they're doing it. It can set up deep down in the foundations of who a person is at their core, when actually it's not their shame and it's not their guilt to keep. And hence why I say I think it's a very important subject, and Lois is just a joy to speak to. And you'll hear, I'll come back on at the end and share a little bit more. But, I just marvel at her energy, how far she's come, and you'll hear her story. And also, she's about to celebrate her 80th birthday, and she's got more energy than some 20-year-olds. I think she's going to be going ice skating or rollerblading for her birthday. Isn't that just like so inspiring? So I do hope that you enjoy the interview. She does cover some sensitive topics, so please be mindful of that. If you're feeling overly sensitive, then just be mindful that she does cover some topics that could be sensitive. Equally, they're very important subjects that I think need to be talked about a bit more, so that there isn't any shame or guilt surrounding them. And I do hope that you find this podcast interview inspiring. And again, I'll come on at the end and just share how you can get more information, or how you can even start your own journey if you haven't already. But until then, enjoy the interview. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I am very well indeed. It's lovely to see you. It's been, 2 or 3 years, I think, since we last spoke.
And we still keep plugging along.
And we still keep thriving and flourishing.
Yeah. Yes. We keep moving ahead. Nothing stops us.
No, as my son was just saying, we're walking the walk and talking the talk.
How old is your son?
He's 20 years old.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a 30-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son, and it's been lovely on this journey to share with them kind of what my realizations and awakenings and awarenesses have been, as I've gone along. So hopefully they can impart all this fantastic wisdom that we've had to learn the hard way, that they can hopefully learn the easy way.
And also take it further.
Yes, exactly. Of course.
Yeah. Somebody's got to start. That's why I began what I did do, because nobody else was doing it.
Absolutely. And this is why I wanted to chat with you again, because it's so interesting, the shame guilt, or the guilt shame, this whole how interwoven it is, and how insidious. And I just think, again, your story is so inspiring as to like where you were physically. So maybe you could start by sharing with people a bit of your background, for what you're doing, and then share like your story, because your physical story of where you were like 20 years ago, 30 years ago is much like myself,
Yeah, and that's a tribute to you, and you can see that in me, and I can see that in you. So that's what we're offering today. So I want you to lead me where you want me to talk about, because as the shortest podcast I had was 5 minutes. The longest one was 2.5 hours.
Oh, fantastic.
So, and then I was even asked to come back. So, shame guilt is such a huge topic, but people don't even realize it because it's incognito.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's why I'm saying, well, let's start giving people kind of background, because obviously my podcast listeners are women who are suffering from endometriosis, adenomyosis, cysts, fibroids, infertility, that kind of stuff, and have probably had this medical condition, this disease, or this, you know, inflammatory condition, probably, you know, I don't know, for years anyway, if not decades. And I think, you know, your own, I'd love for you to start like where you were 20, 30 years ago, because you were incapacitated, weren't you,
Yes.
by what was
Oh, yeah. I was suicidal anyway. We'll begin. Start me out and I'll start.
Yeah. So share where you were before.
Okay. I've always been in the health field. As a child, I started as a nurse's aide in the hospital. And to me, health was everything. And I don't understand why, but perhaps maybe I had so many health issues unknowingly. I have this attitude of keep going. And Wendy and I were just talking about how we just keep going because we keep going.
You have to, yeah.
Well, some people don't have that. And that's what I want to relay today, that we all keep going. And we may not know the answer, but I found out something along the way of my 79 years. Answers come, solutions come before the problem. We don't have a problem and then look for the solution. We've been given the solution. We just have to find it within ourselves or within our friends or whatever. And solutions are always there. And then we have the problem. So we don't have to say, oh, I'm so alone. I have this problem. And, you know, this person can help. I don't know what to do here and there. But always know the solution is there. You just have to be like a detective, trying to find it. So I didn't have that wisdom at 10 and 11 years old. I just kept on going like we are going. I didn't really know too much about my inner life until I was around 50 years old. I was on the merry-go-round, I keep going. And I was very effective. I helped start one of the first kidney hemodialysis unit in the United States.
Amazing.
And I began home dialysis also because the insurances weren't paying for hospital. And so I taught people how to use the machines at home. Amazing. I still don't believe I did all that, but you know, there's a need and you continue doing that. And I lectured throughout the United States. I started the American Nephrology Nurses and Technicians Association, and that's still viable. I started that in 1971, and it's still working. So I left there after 12 years because I needed a break. And that's when transplantation and everything was coming along. So, and why did I do that? Is because I was put in a position to help heal some people who had no alternative. And there was a lot of research to do that and how to use and as a nurse, I had to do different things than I was trained to. So I had to up my game, and I wasn't covered by nursing service. I was covered by the director of the hospital. See, you can do anything. So long story short, I eventually married and wanted to have children. And I was unable, I was probably what you call infertile, because it took me like a year to get pregnant and so forth and so on. And I had 2 miscarriages at 3 months and 1 at 8 months. And we're talking about 50 years ago that the child would have lived. But at that time, they didn't have the neonatal care. Obviously, there's a lot of guilt, shame there. Eventually, God gave me 3 beautiful children, and they all did well. it was very interesting, the three girls, but anybody that raises three girls, they'll understand my comment. However, I had 30 years of migraine headaches and I just, couldn't do what I wanted to do. My body didn't work, but it kept on going. Eventually, my children were going to college and I just collapsed. I was so burdened with depression and I'm thinking, why am I so depressed? I mean, I had this incredible life. I mean, I still have it and I'm just depressed. I can't even get out of bed.
Yeah.
And I've been as a nurse and all. The doctor said, you probably have a year or two to live. This is about 54, because my kidneys were not working properly. And that's because of all the medication I took because of the migraine headaches. In fact, they just wanted to give me more. I had mitral valve prolapse. I think people know that. You have a leaky valve. And that was from my father, who had heart surgery. And that was not cared for, even though I worked in the open heart team. But I was like, at that time, 50, 60 years ago, there were many damaging effects of cardiac surgery. Yeah. They were not as good as they are today. I'm just saying that, yeah, open heart surgery is a lot better and it's almost normal. But 50 years ago, it wasn't. And I'm like, because most of them had problems. Anyway, so here I was in severe pain. And I was so crippled from the scoliosis that was also in my family, that my lungs were collapsing. And because of my lungs were like, I walked like 45 degrees almost.
Gosh. Yeah.
So obviously your lungs aren't going to expand. So the doctors were correct, but I didn't believe them. That makes no sense, but I didn't believe them. Now, when I said there's always solutions, one of my friends, very good friends, moved to the West Coast in Arizona, Sedona. And she said, Lois, why don't you come visit me? And I went, you know what? That's a great idea, because my kids are right in college right now and mom can leave and so forth. And so I visited her and she went, oh my God, you look terrible. And I go, look, I know this. She said, why don't you
stating that? Yeah.
Well, she's a New York fashion lady. So, you expect her to say, darling, what happened to you? And I'd say, darling, I can't walk, I can't breathe. And my kidneys aren't working. So I'm not too, she's
not in a great place. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was correct. She wasn't a bad friend. So she took my hand and she said, I discovered a wonderful doctor. He's a chiropractor, but he's not like normal. He just like does things. She said, because I had bleeding from my nose and I live in New York and we went to Israel. We went to all the best places. She was she lives in heaven now. She was director of marketing for Estee Lauder. I mean, she had, you know what I'm saying. So anyway, darling, they just couldn't do anything. I just got on the plane because I heard about this doctor and I just flew there holding my Kleenexes in the blood. And she said, he adjusted my skull and I'm fine.
Wow.
I picked up the phone and I said, children, come visit me in Sedona. And when you come, please bring my car. I will not leave this area.
Amazing.
So she said, I went there and he said, well, you're not going to die from your scoliosis, but your heart is not working. I'm going to myself, yeah, tell me something. But he didn't do x-rays or anything. He was just intuitive. So he just touched my body and he moved a couple bones and I could breathe. And I went, whoa, is that what it means? So I got out of the office and walked around the mountains.
Wow.
I mean, crippled and everything, but I was breathing.
Yeah.
So I went back and he said, I can help you, but you got to live close. You have very many problems. And I went, you're telling me or something?
I got to live in this body. Yeah.
Yeah. So eventually, I came back home because, one needs to come back from vacation. And a week later, the shoulders in and on. I wish I was with this doctor, but like he's 3,000 miles, like I can take a plane every day, right? I have that amount of money. So, and fixed my shoulder. The next day I went, wow, who is this person? But this is nice. I like this. So long story short, I went back again. And I decided I'm sitting in the kitchen. Okay. 3 girls are in college. One senior, one is a junior, and one's a freshman.
Yeah.
They don't come home that much. I don't know if you had that experience, and I'm talking to some mothers. They'll come home the first month.
When it's their laundry done, or when they're
and they put the laundry. Do you know, I even heard of a guy mailing his laundry to his mother and have it ready when he comes to visit.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so you get the picture. So mom can leave. But I'm sitting there in a rocking chair, and they had 2, 3 cats. The kids had cats. And I'm going, stay here, because I have friends, and I can't breathe, can't walk, but I'm here. Or I can just go live there. But if I live there, I have to sell the house. I don't have the money to have like a couple houses. So I'm sitting in the rocking chair, seriously. Live or die or possibly live.
Yeah.
Die.
Hard choice.
Possibly live. I'm serious. It sounds kind of remote at this point, but it's like people do live that way when we're very ill. And so I sold the house and moved, and I put everything in storage for the girls, and I saved all their achievement letters and their trophies and their baby dolls. And it took 3 months, Wendy, to pack it all up and make the kids each happy and so forth. Anyway, so eventually I did move, and he was able to realign my body. And at that point, I could not go outside in the daytime. I could only go outside at night. And if anybody has brain injuries, I think they would understand that the sunlight adds extra heat to already overburdened skull. So I thank God that stores were open in the evening, because otherwise I couldn't go outside. That's how severe my headaches were.
Yeah.
So I had all these brain traumas because I was severely abused. And then the memories start surfacing. And as you know, as you get chiropractic or that type of adjustments, the memories get triggered. And so I was like, wow. I was thrown down the steps. I remember, then all of a sudden I saw myself as like a 1-year-old. Somebody was holding my feet and hitting my head on the floor.
Gosh.
I know. It's like, oh my, no wonder I had headaches.
Oh, so sorry to hear that.
So we're talking about major abuse, and that my body showed it. And plus the scoliosis from my mother and the heart valve from my father and so forth and so on. But I was healing. And then the emotional issues start coming up, as you know. And I was so depressed that I couldn't even get out of bed. And that's like, talking about that now, it's like, so we all can be dragged down. And so when I was thinking that the world would be better off without me, I called my friend who's a psychiatrist. Good idea, because I was suicidal. And then, I got in a woman's group, we talked a little bit, and then I felt better. But Wendy, I was not happy. I wasn't suicidal, but believe me, I wasn't the lowest go-go girl.
Yeah.
One person in a woman's group said, Lois, what do you do about shame? And I went, that's an interesting word. Here I'm loaded with it. Nobody ever mentioned it in therapy. Nobody ever talked about it. And I said, Now I have this detective mind that won't let me alone until I figure it out. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but anyway, my
Oh,
mind,
it's such a blessing because you wouldn't be here without it. Neither of us would be.
it's just going and going. And one psychic said, you would make the best detective. And I said, probably, but I got to detect my own body to find out what's going on it. So I went to the library, and this is 1999. We don't have the computer where you plug in shame. We have to go to the card index. Okay. Trailblazer, Wendy. So John Bradshaw was in when I could find. He says it's sickness of the soul. Yeah. So I went, So my mind started wondering. To backtrack, in my remembering, I remember dying as a child, maybe 5 or 6. Then all of a sudden the image came. I'm not mentioning who. Twisted my neck, threw me on the floor, and sat on my head. So my neck was broken. See, 1, 2, and 3 were broken. Gosh. Obviously, you don't live through that. We all know that. But I just remember another dimension. It isn't like I can tell you who I talked to and everything. I just remember being pulled back. I remember I can feel it on my arm, being pulled back. And ever since that time, I've had access to other dimensions of learning. Yeah. And, that's all I can say. And because I was extremely dyslexic in school with all the brain traumas and so forth and so on. So much so that I did remember my parents being called into school. I think I was in the 1st or 2nd grade, and they told my parents, I was there, that I was an idiot child. Yeah. Because I only write backwards, dyslexia, and she can't read. And when I looked at a book, it was all, the words would always move, and that's Erin syndrome. So they said she is an idiot child who's stupid and cannot learn. So we, as a Catholic school, will keep her in school, but she must sit at the back of the classroom. Oh my goodness. And we don't expect her to take any exams or anything. And put your efforts into your other children. Gosh. Ouch. Oh my, that's well, I'm glad I remembered it much later in my life, because I wouldn't have done the kinder unit.
Oh, gosh, the cruelty, the thoughtlessness, the nastiness of some people, especially with you.
Well, but that's 1950. They didn't know. Yeah. And so that what they did was they put me in front of the class to read a book, and everybody had a chance to read. So Lois picks the book up, and the words are all moving. Remember, I have a creative mind.
Yeah.
So if the words are moving, I just turn the book around and maybe they'll stop, right? I mean, it's logical sense, right?
Absolutely. Love it. I love that, turning it around, literally.
So the nun, the holy nun, comes over, slaps me in the face. How dare you? I'm going, I thought it was a great idea. Anyway, so that's my schooling. However, I just knew things, Wendy. I got hundreds and this and that. And I only thing I can say, I was in tune. And I drove my parents crazy to tap dance. I just had to dance. And finally they gave up. And I tap danced when I was like in the 3rd or 4th grade, all the way through high school.
Lovely.
And I think the right and left brain kind of healed, because I was reading and doing well, but tap dancing saved my life. How about that? Fantastic. I still tap dance.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, so that's showing you why I was able to come up with a new idea that wasn't on the internet. Because
John Bradshaw's, really well known in that, understanding how shame is manifested.
Yeah, so it sort of lit up things in my brain to put it together. So I was so happy. I was tap dancing because I didn't have to go to therapy for anxiety and depression and anger and suicide and not feeling good enough. All I had to do was got rid of shame, guilt. I was like, wow, this is so cool. Not sure how to do it, but it's really cool. So I learned, and at that point, I was doing something similar to the inner child work. I was, depression. I would say, hi, depression. I got tired of talking to therapists. I said, I talked to my depression. So I say, hi, depression, how are you? And I telepathically heard words and saw things. And then, who's talking to me, this negative? And that was my inner critic. And I said, who are you? He says, I'm King. I go, okay, hi, King. So like I'm talking to you, Wendy, I was talking to myself. And that's how I found out where the shame guilt hides and so forth and so on. So I just learned how to get rid of it and help the inner parts of me. And all of a sudden, the chiropractor healing, I call him a shaman, could even heal me deeper.
Yeah.
Because I was releasing the emotional aspect. And when I went to the chiropractor, because my depression part had scoliosis, I didn't have, Lois. My depression part did. So when I went to the chiropractor, I took my depression part. Her name was Sally. I took Sally and I became Sally for him to adjust me. Wow. Just like that was healing. It was amazing. So people said, Lois, I'm in Sedona. Sedona is a place of learning and, well, it's changed a lot now, but 20 years ago, it was more of a sacred place where people were came there to heal.
Yeah.
And they came to me and they said, Lois, why are you so, what happened? I said, I'm talking to myself. They said, can we do that? And I said, I guess so. So I taught them what I was doing. And they, within, 2 or 3 sessions, got well. And I taught them how to do it. So it was like, they didn't have to come to me all the time. They would call if they got in trouble, but it was working. And then the mothers and the grandmothers and the kids start coming to me. And someone said, Lois, I says, what? You should charge for this. I said, charge for what? I'm just telling people how to talk to themselves. And anyway, so I started to help many people. And I was so excited, Wendy, that the local people wanted me to talk. And so I went there to talk and they said, what is your topic? I said, shame, guilt. They go, oh, we don't talk about that. That doesn't exist. I got rid of all my shame. I have that. But you're so happy. Why don't you talk about happiness and how to be happy and joyful and positive? I said, if you can't get rid of the shame and guilt, you're not going to be happy. Well, you can, but it's like a struggle. And as you're not going to win, you're just going to fight with yourself. I said, the unconscious and the conscious are fighting.
Yeah.
And you got to make peace. And you can do all the tapping, you can do all the talking, you can do the affirmations. But if you don't go in there and make peace with the fighters inside of you, you're not going to be happy. Well, you can, but it'll take a lot of alcohol and other things to make you happy. I wasn't allowed to talk, Wendy, and it really bothered me. And they said, you have to change your MO. I said, what are you talking about? She said, you call yourself a shame guilt educator. That's just going to be put in the trash. I want to help you with marketing, but you're never going to get anywhere. And I said, but that's who I am. And I need to put those words out for people.
Yeah.
So the pandemic hit, and then everybody has to sit home with the shame guilt that they say they don't have. And the phone start lightening up.
Amazing.
And well, it's great because people are now more in touch with their life because they don't have to run to the subway and all this stuff, and they're not, that commuting time really, well, you work a lot at home, you understand commuting, and as a whole nother story. So that's my story, and what I've come to learn, and this may be old hat for you, but I want to, make it into a way that's more cohesive, that the reason that shame, guilt is with us, and it sticks, it has a glue, it's glue, it sticks to us, is because it's wanting us, it's needing us. We do not need shame, guilt.
Yeah.
It serves no purpose. And the people that say shame is bad and guilt is good, you don't have a healthy poison.
No.
Shame makes more guilt, guilt makes more shame.
Yeah.
It's shame, guilt. It's not shame and guilt. It's a coin. Coin has heads and it has tails. We have shame, guilt, shame on one side, guilt on the other. It's just certain names. That's all it is. It's shame, guilt.
I thought it was interesting. I was watching one of your videos and you talked about procrastination being like an internal shame, guilt, which I thought was really interesting.
In my book, and I just put this up, shame, guilt names. Depression, sadness, procrastination, underachieving, genocide, anger, indifference, embarrassment, arrogance, cheating, PTSD, eating disorders, bullying, moody, regret, loneliness, grief, self-abuse, pity, hatred, suffering, lying, criminal, all negative emotions. All negative emotions come from shame, guilt. So that's why I was tap dancing. Just get rid of the fire. And now
get your body moving to try and move what had been projected onto you.
Correct. Now I've had people not feeling that this was correct. So I said, okay, let's do depression. And if you talk about it and see the things in your life, you see it was caused by shame, guilt experience. If you go to sadness, you can go to the, deep down, but we don't have that time here. But if you want to take any negative emotion and go backward in time and see where you got it from, and it was a shame, guilt effect.
And it's so true, and it's fascinating, isn't it? I think this is why I wanted you on to chat, because I know that a lot of women with endometriosis, you've described there your past and your history and all this awareness about what had happened to you when you were younger, and then as you got older, how this showed up in your body and literally crippled your body and affected you physically. And then that inner pusher calling you, your instincts, intuition, is like, there's something more to this than meets the eye, and I really, really respect and admire you for having that curiosity. And invariably the women that are following me or on this, they have that little nuance, that little light, little sparkle, little essence of like, there has to be another way, there has to be a reason. And I think with shame, guilt, it's such an interesting, it makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Well, it's true. It's true.
It is true.
Yeah.
But I think what I like about you calling it for what it is, and probably the reason people didn't like you talking about it, because there's discomfort, because therefore there has to be an originator of that shame, guilt somewhere that has been projected and put upon you, so that's probably why some people are uncomfortable even talking about it, but it makes so much sense.
Yes. Shame, guilt, energy only has one defect. It dissolves in detection.
Absolutely.
About that.
Yeah.
The jig is up. And this is what Lois is all about. The jig's up, people. The jig's up.
I like that phrase of it dissolves from detection. And I think that's it, that even you talking about speaking to your various parts is something that I encourage our clients to do, name their part, identify their energy, their needs, their wants. But that's exactly what you're doing, is identifying the shame, guilt, even the memory, whatever. Once you have that light on it, and the awareness on it changes it. And then it has this kind of compounding effect, doesn't it? Of you're like, oh, no wonder I think that. And
the jig is up.
Yeah.
Now, you may have a better term, which is great. I ask people, just use whatever words work for you. That's what works for me. Remember Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz? She walks up the yellow brick road.
Yeah.
Great anticipation of the wizard. Dear Toto pulls the curtain back.
Yeah.
And what do you see? A little old man, bald and gray, with a big silver machine, puffing green smoke.
Yeah.
What happens? Shame, guilt, energy is a puff of green smoke.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And the jig's up. Dorothy gets her power back and comes back home.
Yeah.
So we have to be Toto.
Yeah.
Be a Toto. Every time you say you feel shame, these are suggestions. Anytime people feels that shame, guilt, you go, I'm Toto. I'm Toto.
Be a Toto. I like that. That can be your new tagline.
Yeah, be a Toto.
Shame, guilt, be a Toto.
Yeah. And I'm going to have a podcast finally, and I'm going to call it Toto Moments.
Love it. But that's it, isn't it? And I think what I'm loving hearing too is that you're being very creative with the uncovering process, because sometimes when you are immersed in those feelings of shame, guilt, for example, you feel so much shame and so much guilt that, and as you say, they're two sides.
It's all the same. Yeah.
That you can get paralyzed,
You are paralyzed.
Yeah.
You are. It's called shame, guilt, hypnosis. Okay. Yeah. We all, you and me still, we're all in shame, guilt, hypnosis. We're paralyzed.
Unless you can figure out, unless you go, oh, I know what that person or that thing's trying to do to me, I'm not going to take that on. So it's interesting that you can feel that shame, guilt paralysis sometimes. And then you're like, whoa, that isn't me. That's projection, or that's past. And you can really that's when it allows you, as you say, to do the Toto on it, pull back the curtain and get a sense of what on earth is that, and see it for the reality. Because I think even just you describing your childhood, all our childhoods perhaps weren't great, and then, that's been projected onto us. And then we think that we aren't great because we're carrying the guilt, or we were the ones in the family that break the ancestral line of all this that's been passed down.
Right. An important thing to remember, it's not the event. It's the shame, guilt in the event.
Absolutely.
And that's why people say, oh, I want to get rid of my inner critic. No, the inner critic is
agree
good.
with you. I was telling my son I was coming on to speak to you, and this is why I love you, because there's far too much new age dangerous claptrap out there about death to the critic and death to the ego. No, they're parts of you that are trying to protect you.
You can't cut off your head to be happy or to be beautiful.
No.
And I don't want to do that. You can't, but you need to take the shame, guilt out of the ego. They need to take the shame, guilt out of the inner critic. You need to get the shame, guilt out of the person, event that killed me.
Yeah.
The event is there, but it doesn't have the charge.
Absolutely.
So that's what's so important, that people go, oh, I had one client who called me and said, Lois, I'm lost. I go, okay. How can I help? I've known him for quite a while. He said, I meditated and meditated and meditated, and I got rid of the ego. I got rid of all of this. Lois, I only know your telephone number. But he got rid of it all, but he got rid of the events to get rid of the shame. And the events still came back with the shame. You just have to get rid of the shame. You can't, I don't have a past. You can't do that. Yeah. You have a past. I love my past. I don't love the shame, guilt in the past, and that hitting and the beating and all that. But I get rid of the energy of the shame, guilt.
But I think so few people appreciate or they underestimate how our past can play out in our present.
Oh, it is.
It's so compartmentalized, and shame, guilt in particular, it's very insidious. It's kind of like putting drops of poison in a well. It's not quite obvious on the surface. And again, as what showed up in your body and can happen with women with endometriosis, there's this disease that's lying deep down. And if there are toxic people around about you, reinforcing or triggering the shame guilt, or jumping or sniffing out or sensing that you have shame guilt about that, who can actually play and prey on those sort of elements as well.
Of course. Now, I think it might, love energy, we all know that. And what does that do? That gives us happiness and joy and confidence. We're geniuses. We love you. We collaborate. We're giving. We're loving. We're receiving. It has what? I don't know, 100 different emotions from the love energy.
Yeah.
Shame guilt energy gives us all the ones that I was reading. Yeah. You know what, Wendy? That's all there is. There ain't no more. It's just love energy and shame guilt energy. That's all there is. There ain't no more. It's that simple.
But what I'm hearing from you is that, even just calling it out helps people identify that there's some toxic, heavy, negative, suffocating energy in there that is not theirs to keep. It is, the idea is to release that, to identify it, to observe it, identify it, observe it, and release it.
You have to release it, but in order to release it, you have to find it. It's like, I get rid of all this. That don't work. You have to find it. It's a do-it-yourself. Like people say, you have a computer and you get the computer virus. What happens to your computer? Don't even talk about it, right, Wendy? It's a horrible day. Now, did you see the computer virus coming into your computer? No.
Exactly.
But you know what happened to your computer. So what do? You get hopefully you have a few friends and that are tech, and they do a computer virus removal program. And that's what we have to do. We have to do a shame guilt removal program. But anyway, the reason that we become so debilitated from the shame guilt energy, because the shame guilt energy is negative, and you and most of the people I think you deal with understand about us being an energy being. We have the meridians and we are an energy being. So what happens? The computer is an energy instrument. The shame guilt negative energy comes into us. You stupid jerk, why are you doing that? She's a dumb kid, leave her alone. I mean, those comments have energy, and they come into you, me, and turn our positive emotions to negative ones. Each emotion has a positive orientation and a negative. We're already wonderful. We're already happy. We're already joyful. We already are, but the shame guilt came in and turned the knob. Compassion turns to depression. Passion turns to anger. And we get rid of the shame guilt. They go back to the positive. That's why I was dancing. It's like, man, this works. I don't have to take each individual emotion because I'll be dead before I'm well.
Exactly. But the very fact that you were able to identify that, and then, and I remember when I interviewed you the last time, that you were saying like how you'd gone from this 45-degree angle, hunched over, crippled, debilitated in bed, and now you have more energy now, lightness, brightness than you've ever had, because you've been able to identify and release, through, the work that you do with shame guilt.
Yeah. And the more that you work with acknowledging what happened, takes a while. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years and I'm still like, oh, they caught me, so we are inbred. We are generational inbred with shame guilt energy, because that's what they taught us. Okay. And the government reinforces it, the religions reinforce it, our friends reinforce it, our enemies reinforce it. And that's the story. So hopefully in about 10 or 20 years, we will be able to breathe easier, because most people like Wendy and so forth, other people are spreading it out and saying this and that, and we're going to have it easier. But it's always harder on the beginning people. That's why I have the shame guilt stoppers on my Facebook page. And I have a book called How to Be a Jewish Mother, written in 1940 something. Anyway, I picked this up at the thrift store. And How to guilt your children into obedience.
Oh my
Because
goodness.
no, it's seriously, if you want, I can
Oh
scan a couple
my-
pages and it tells you how guilt is used to make your children obey and be a good,
control.
how to guilt your children and be a good Jewish mother.
Oh
I'm
my
serious. It actually says it, word for word. I can't email you the book, but I can mail you a couple pages. And this is true, written by a Jewish mother, and how to be a very lovely training manual.
Oh my Lord. I mean, right there, if you ever wanted it in print.
It's in print. People didn't believe me. I said, I'm Xeroxing, well, copying it on the page, and I emailed them the pages because they, Lois, I can't. I said, I did not write this book, but some of my family found it.
Gosh, I know. But isn't that so I mean, you mentioned religion as well. Again, religion was originally designed, as you were saying earlier, as hope and connection to inner selves, higher power, you want to call it. But then you get some people who then either fragmented off in religion and then use that to shame and guilt. I mean, there's the Catholic shame, there's all the that you hear the religions reinforcing the shame, but to actually see that there's a book on how to use it to control and manipulate and bring up good children. Is it any wonder as adults, especially, I mean, this is the good thing about the internet now, is there's so much more information about it. So people can, like you say, they think there's something in this, that really relates to me. And I don't want this. This is not mine to keep.
And I applaud you, Wendy, because you said the shame, not my shame. You cannot say mine. And if you do, no. I mean, people that are speaking and they say mine, and I have to stop them. I said, you don't write me, I don't care. You cannot say my thing. You cannot own it. It's not yours to own.
But you can really feel it, can't you? You can feel when someone.
Of course you can. Of course you can.
I use the analogy like a box. Someone's trying to give you a box of shame and guilt and put it on your lap. And I've talked with some of our clients going, just say, thank you very much for your box and your gift, but I'm going to give it back to you. I'm not going to hold on to this because this is not mine in which to have.
Yours. Yeah. It's yours. Yeah. And so you're getting the picture. And that's why I became a filmmaker, because I had to show it. Now, shame, guilt, energy comes into us like a virus, and it's negative. Why does it do that? It does it because it survives on our light. It needs our light energy to live.
Yeah.
That's why it's so hard to get rid of it, because it's sucking you. It's some of our very eloquent hosts say, the shame guilt leech, the shame guilt vampire, the alien invader, the evil wizard that messes with your mind. So yeah, you can name it anything you want, but it is a leech.
Yeah.
It's an energy like a computer virus. So when it comes into us, it turns our positive emotions to negative ones. And it turns our mind into a confused state. So if you're in a confused state, you're probably in shame guilt. Never make a decision when you're in confused mind or shame guilt. It will always be wrong.
But it's interesting because even hearing you talk, obviously a lot of shame, guilt, and we all know this, don't we, just intuitively, was put upon us, as you're just reading from that book, from a young age, so not only do we have to deal with the day-to-day or the new experiences or new people, new environments that we're encountering, and people trying to manipulate, control, influence, whatever, through shame, guilt, or whatever. And we've all been there. I mean, look at the newspaper headlines, look at the radio and the TV headlines. I literally don't turn any news, radio, I don't buy any papers, because before you know it, they're like, shame, guilt is just oozing out of all
of them. I know. And now you can see it. And I haven't watched TV for so many years. It's like, whatever. Anyway, so the shame guilt alters our frequency, alters the way our liver works, alters the way our ovaries work. and it turns them from a positive orientation, which is healing, to a negative one of disease. Now, you can hear the same shame guilt comment, and I can use the same guilt comment. And if we're stupid and don't know anything, your lungs will be affected, like you have a hard time breathing, and I'll have stomach pain. It just depends your weakest organ. That's all it is. It ain't no more.
Yeah.
Okay. We all react differently. That's why it's such a, ooh, what it's you. You'll react differently because you have the weakest organ being affected.
Yeah. But I think, as you said, I mean, we're energetic beings anyway, and this is not a woo-woo conversation. This is just a fact. We are affected by.
Some people don't understand that yet, but you know, you're above it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's it. So you're right. And this was like way out of my realm of understanding, 15 years ago. But now it's like, it makes so much sense, because you and I can walk into a room and we probably able to, we can look around the room and go, oh, that person's had an argument, that person's feeling sad, depressed, that person's super happy. We could pick up the energy, the aura, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And it's okay. It's okay. Just don't do the shame guilt.
But that's it. The shame guilt is very manipulative and dark and negative energy.
Well, it's there to make you, the whole purpose of shame guilt upon this planet is to keep it into like a prison planet. Yeah. We are not free. We think we are, but we're not. But that's a whole nother discussion.
Shame guilt energy. Yeah.
Shame guilt energy is said through the words. It's shed, through the pulpit. And I have sent you David Hawkins' map of consciousness, and you can share that any way you like. Now, David Hawkins lives in heaven right now, but he put each emotion to an energy number.
Yeah. The
highest being enlightenment, which is 700,000, 7 with 5 zeros, to the 30th power. And there is such a number, according to my mathematician son-in-law. Okay. All those zeros. Okay. Yeah. That's enlightenment, the highest you can go. Then it goes down to love and joy and happiness and giving.
Serenity,
and peace, and you can look at it and you can share it. At 200, it goes negative. We get anger and hatred and revenge and depression and so forth and so on. The lowest number is shame guilt. Comes in at 10.
Interesting, yeah.
That's the lowest frequency or energy that a human can survive in. There's nothing after shame guilt.
Yeah. And it's such a peaceful energy, isn't it? I mean, you think of so many, you know ourselves, we had, our journey was that we were so crippled physically because of those energies. And the people that are stuck in that energy through perhaps no fault of their own, you can see it. You can see how the whole spirit has collapsed. The whole physical form has just, crippled under the weight of that. So it's really interesting you say that is 10. That's like the lowest energy scale.
And that's why suicide is usually preceded by I'm not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Suicide's very rampant right now. So guilt is very rampant. So when people say, oh, guilt is a moral, virtuous emotion because now you can repent for your sins. No, you'll kill yourself. That's how you repent for your sins.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that we're having these kind of conversations, because I think they're candid and they're common sense. But again, especially as women, and I know it affects men too. I have a son. I understand, like, his energy and who he is. He's a lovely person, and how men have challenges too, certain sensitive men.
Oh, definitely. But it's more, the more sensitive you are, the more shame guilt affects you. That's all.
The more, like a sponge, you absorb it because you are so sensitive. You have the higher.
Right. But the good news is, the bad news is it goes right in because you don't have those filters.
Yeah.
They say, oh, toughen up. No, I don't toughen up. I feel. The bad news is that the good news is that it comes out that easy.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you take somebody very dense, you know, we'd be having a conversation for years and they finally get it, which is okay. It's okay. But people like you and me and others, we need to know this because we need to throw it away because it cripples us so deeply.
Exactly, because we're so connected and so sensitive and so aware of what's happening.
And
this is
they
why
need people like you and I and all the other light people. We need your light to retard the shame, guilt. Now, awareness is the key. That's what we're talking about. We're needing to be aware. Now, a lot of times people are in guilt and struggle and they're just in the guilt hole. So I'm saying never, ever be in guilt. Yeah. Never, ever. You can be angry at somebody. You can hate them. You can be depressed. I'm not saying that's the best way, but it's anything. Yeah. Any emotion is better than guilt because guilt gives you no solutions. Now, I had a client recently who was extremely guilt-ridden because her mother passed away from alcoholism and she was unable as a daughter to help her out of it. But you know, and I know, if a person is not willing or able to heal, it probably won't help them. So I suggested her to be regretful. At least it's higher than guilt, right? You can be regret that you couldn't help your mother. So with the regret, she was able to be creative and have different plans and symposiums and events for people who were alcoholic and how they could get out. She did the same thing with them that she did with her mother, but the other people were receptive. Yeah. So she brought her information out.
Amazing. Yeah.
Regret gives you solutions. Guilt has no solutions.
Yeah.
And when in my own journey, after I got rid of a lot of the guilt and shame, I began to channel different dimensions. And I call them light readings, spirit readings. And those readings help you raise your vibration. It doesn't say step 1, step 2, step 3. It's just reading about love and light energy, and it raises your vibration. So if you're in guilt and you don't have any friends and you don't know what to do, go on my website and I have, now is the time. You can download 30 pages of my light readings. And that, is it going to cure you? No, but you got to get out of guilt.
Love it.
And you just got to get out of guilt.
Well, maybe you could share your web address so people can go to it.
Yeah, Lois Hollis, LoisHollis.com. And I have 3 websites on my website. So you can just see other websites. I have my films and Making U-Turn and Truth is Simple. And I have a very active tech. So that's what I'm about. Now, there's another process of how to do this, but the main thing, and I think that's what we're trying to do today, is raise the awareness that there is such a thing as shame, guilt, energy. Now, I heard part of a podcast that one of my friends who's very well connected to a lot of stars and influential people and all that. So, oh, well, see what they got. And they said, never use hatred. It's so bad. You can feel guilty. Guilty is good. And I'm going, oh, yeah. But they don't understand frequency, Wendy.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
Totally. Totally.
So yes, hatred is not the best, but it's better than guilt.
Absolutely. And I think what you're reiterating is like it paralyzes you, as we said earlier on. It just, you become incapacitated, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's so encapsulating, it's so imprisoning that you then can't do anything. And as you just said there, feeling the feelings and having other emotions, it allows the energy to be kick-started to actually identify.
They do something about it. Yeah. Because when you're in shame, guilt, hypnosis, you're hypnotized to be destructive. Now, what a great method for somebody or something to make you a victim. It's the
Absolutely.
perfect thing. Do you know that Africa, oh, this is what, 20, 30 years ago, the apartheid, and if you ever read anything about that, how Africa was thriving and then all of a sudden it crumbled. Do you know how they got a whole country to become defeated without war? They used shame guilt.
Mm.
That's how powerful shame guilt is. It can actually destroy a civilization.
Yeah, it's so insidious, isn't it? It's just so
Yeah,
into the foundations of the human spirit, and it's like a fungus. It just eats
it's
away.
it's a leech. It's a leech. You can call it a shame guilt fungus. I like that one too. I don't. I let me know what
Whatever
names you will come
analogy.
up with. Yeah, it's so much fun. I have no preference, just that it's a weapon of mass destruction.
It is, and and it's good that we're having these kind of conversations, which is why I wanted you to come onto the podcast as well, because I feel there's so many beautiful women that are part of our community that are are just slowly opening up to the concept of, like, it's they don't want to be victims. They're not victims. That's why they're listening to me or reading my books, and they're at the beginning, or
They're stuck. They're stuck.
They're on their journey. And of course, this is new. This is different. It took me I wrestled with all of this like it was my fault, all these emotions and feelings and stuff that I had. I was shamed and guilt into being too sensitive, and, oh, you can't take a joke and all that kind of stuff because it wasn't funny. And I was sensitive because what they're saying was not nice, so rather than seeing things in the reality of what they were, the projections were to control and suppress and, put shame, guilt upon.
And I was dying. There wasn't
Yeah.
it was just like, you have 2 years or 1 year. It wasn't like when. It was like, yeah, one. But I didn't have the information to pull me out.
Yeah.
So I made it, and when I found it, it's like, well, people just have to know.
Absolutely.
And
but that's what I love. That's why
know.
you and I are similar, because
Just have to
I
know.
was total organ failure. I was like probably 6 months away from death. No, I mean, I've even got the test to prove it. And like there has to be another way. Like, if my finger can heal, why is my insides not healing? And why am I like incapacitated despite the willpower and the drive, and the passion? So when we've had those experiences, it's like our calling, it's like our mission. Like we have no choice, because the idea of people languishing, in the states that we were in, is just too much to bear. That's why this information.
And the shame guilt energy also blocks you from spirit. Like, you're talking on the cell phone, this is God and this is you. And the shame guilt energy is distorting the conversation. You get static on the line. Absolutely. So it affects your spiritual, your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy. It's a complete wipeout. It's so effective.
Yeah.
And they tell it to use it.
Oh, I still can't believe that. Well, look, Lois, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And if there's a parting kind of inspiring phrase or statement that you want to make to the listeners, what would you want to leave them with?
Be a Toto.
I love that. Be a Toto.
And hopefully they know. Some of the millennials say, who are you talking about? I'm going, oh, yeah. So hopefully everybody knows about Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. But be a Toto.
Be a Toto. That has to be your tagline. You know that, because it's so intriguing. People are going, hey, what does that even mean? Be a Toto. Well, look, thank you so much. And keep in touch, Wendy. Keep in touch. I'm going to pause this in a second, and then we'll continue. Okay. But thank you so much for coming on. You're doing amazing. Blessings to all. Blessings to all. And be a Toto. Bye. Thank you so much. Hi, it's Wendy again, and I do hope that you enjoyed that wonderful interview with Lois. It's very thought-provoking, isn't it, when we start to expand our level of awareness as to kind of what's going on and around us, our bodies, our energies. And from a young age, I suspect if you're here and you're listening to this and you've suffered from endometriosis for a long, long time, it's that you have this high degree of sensitivity, and you've been picking up, whether it's intended projection or unconscious projection of shame and guilt within the family or the generational ancestral line. Doesn't really matter. The key thing is recognizing it for what it is and how to start on your own journey. Now, Lois has got some fabulous information available on her website. And equally, if you want some sort of guided support as to how to really uncover and unravel that as well, then do consider joining our Unblock Emotional Blocks on the 21-day challenge. If you're feeling you may have emotions blocked, then probably it's because of the shame and the guilt that's keeping them blocked and not allowing you that connection to yourself that you deserve. And that's probably why your body is screaming at you to such high degrees for you to listen and pay attention, when of course you just want to run away from it. So you can go to loishollis.com to get details from her. Equally, you can go to healendometriosisnaturally.com/programs and read about the 21-day challenge, which is a wonderful way to start. Again, do both. Get, if you feel that you resonate with what Lois and I were talking about, then it's important to really dive in and immerse yourself in this positive and supportive and inspiring content, because you don't deserve to be in pain. Pain is a way of your body trying to get your attention, possibly because whatever painful emotions and things have been activated or triggered at a young age have been suppressed and shoved down. This was a concept that I struggled with. If you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you know that I go on about this. It's why I'm so passionate about it now. Same with Lois. You've heard her story. When she was 50, she was being told she's lucky if she had a year to live. Know my story. I was the same. Now look where we are now. So if we can do it, then I know you can too. So but the key thing is to keep taking action, keep moving forward, and enjoy the content and recognize that you are worth it. So hope to speak to you soon, and to your health. Bye.